Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at a huge modern psychological mystery today, using an incredible framework from behavioral scientist Arthur C. Brooks. Look around. Think about the most driven, successful people you know. Maybe you're even thinking of yourself right now. Notice anything weird? Despite having all the outward markers of success, the degrees, the impressive job titles, the picture-perfect lifestyles, there's this pervasive, almost suffocating sense of emptiness. We live in an era of literal, unprecedented convenience, yet so many of us feel totally adrift. So today we're going to unpack exactly why that is, who's getting hit the hardest, and most importantly, how we find our way out. We got to start with this deeply unsettling German concept, Unheimlich. It perfectly captures the dark, uneasy vibe Brooks noticed when he went back to university campuses after a decade away. Imagine walking into your childhood home. Everything looks exactly the same, but the air is just heavy. The smell is slightly off. You get this profound gut-level dread that something is terribly wrong, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. That's the exact atmosphere Brooks found among the brightest, most ambitious young adults out there. The usual hum of optimism? Gone. Replaced by an undercurrent of fear, simmering anger, and just a really heavy sadness. So you really have to ask yourself, why does it feel like something is terribly wrong at home? This dread isn't just a one-off anecdote. Actually, it's the defining symptom of what behavioral scientists call a psychogenic epidemic. Basically, this is a massive cultural phenomenon causing tremendous, measurable human suffering, but without any biological cause. It's an illness of our societal psychology. We can't isolate it under a microscope like a virus, but honestly, its effects are just as debilitating, sweeping right through our communities. And the data paints a pretty terrifying picture of this cultural disease. Between 2005 and 2019, adolescent depression didn't just inch up a little bit, it nearly tripled. Just pause and think about that. A near tripling in a little over a decade. Meanwhile, the percentage of adults who say they're not too happy with their lives has more than doubled since the year 2000. We are basically charting a course of profound collective misery, and it completely defies all the rapid technological and economic progress we've made in that exact same time frame. It gets even more specific, and honestly, way more alarming. 45%, nearly half of all young women in America between 12 and 26, have been formally diagnosed with an anxiety or depression disorder recently. This is not some fringe issue, guys. This is the dominant psychological reality of an entire generation. When almost half of a demographic group is clinically suffering, we're way past looking at individual anomalies. We are looking at a massive systemic failure. Naturally, when faced with this much societal unhappiness, we immediately look for someone to blame, right? The older generation points the finger down, saying young adults are entitled and indulgent. Then the younger generation points the finger up, absolutely furious about a bait-and-switch economy and impossible housing costs. But here's the thing. Both of these arguments totally fail to explain the unprecedented depth of our modern misery. Every generation has economic struggles and intergenerational friction. That's just history. But that alone doesn't cause a psychogenic epidemic of this staggering magnitude. So if it's not just the economy or entitlement, what is it? Well, a super popular and totally valid explanation is the screen time trap. Staring at our phones is an undeniable proximate cause of our anxiety. But as Brooks points out, it's really just acting as an addictive, soothing behavior. It's the painkiller, not the actual disease. We're endlessly scrolling social media, we're interacting with two-dimensional avatars instead of real humans, mostly because we're using these behaviors to distract ourselves from a much deeper, hidden absence. I mean, we've all been there, right? Lost in an endless feed at 2 a.m., desperately trying to numb out a quiet anxiety we can't even name. To figure out what people are actually searching for during that endless scroll, Brooks focused his investigation on a very specific group. He didn't just look at marginalized or struggling groups. He looked at the demographic that, on paper at least, should be doing the absolute best, the highly ambitious strivers. These are the incredibly smart, tenacious, hardworking folks trained to solve complex problems. It's a crazy irony. The people best equipped to navigate the world are the ones most thoroughly lost in it. These are people who literally check all the boxes. People, honestly, very much like you and me. Let's look at a few patient profiles here. Mark, Maria, and Paul. On paper, they are absolute textbook successes. Mark's a healthy data analyst, Maria is a brilliant military officer with an engineering master's, and Paul is a highly established professor and author. But their internal reality, it's vastly different from their glowing resumes. Internally, they report feeling completely empty. They describe their lives as if they're stuck waiting in some existential airport terminal for a flight that never actually leaves. They literally have everything society told them to get, but they feel absolutely nothing. Mark perfectly captured this dilemma with a story that just brings this whole abstract concept to life. He was on one of his dozens of dating app first dates, and the woman happened to mention her garbage disposal was broken. So, Mark went back to her place and fixed it. And he realized later that fixing a total stranger's clogged garbage disposal, doing something undeniably tangible with his own two hands, gave him more deep, genuine satisfaction than almost anything in his prestigious, white-collar career. Why? Simply because he deeply craved the feeling of being genuinely needed. His perfectly curated digital life and complex spreadsheets just couldn't provide that raw human connection.
And then there's Paul. He sums up this striver's dilemma with just absolute Kafkaesque brilliance. He said, "Life is like a factory churning out days of my existence, indifferently prepackaged for my mandatory consumption." Wow. He beautifully articulated the absurd emptiness of spending your whole life meticulously chasing academic gold stars. He felt totally paralyzed by this profound ennui, secretly just yearning to drop the whole shebang, walk away, and go hike a mountain to find whatever it was he was actually looking for.
The penny really drops when we zoom out and look at all these strivers together. We start to realize that all of this busy work, the dating app swiping, the endless social media scrolling, it's all just a massive digital simulation. And it's a simulation built entirely to cover up a deficit of the one single thing you absolutely cannot fake.
Meaning that widespread, paralyzing emptiness everyone's feeling, it is rooted entirely in a massive cultural collapse of genuine meaning. People literally feel like they're living in a simulation because, psychologically speaking, they kind of are. We've substituted authentic meaning for fake digital rewards. We've basically built this entire ecosystem of substitute gratifications simply because the real thing has gone totally missing from our daily lives.
Let's look at the actual science of happiness to see exactly how this works. Behavioral scientists tell us that happiness isn't just some vague, floating emotion. It actually requires three essential components to function, almost like a literal equation. You absolutely need enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. All three of these have to be present for a person to truly thrive. You really have to treat these three elements as psychological macronutrients. Think about it just like a physical diet. You need protein, carbs, and fats to survive, right? Well, modern society gives us an absolute abundance of enjoyment. I mean, we have endless streaming, gaming, and entertainment right at our fingertips. And we get plenty of satisfaction, too. We hustle, we check off our to-do lists, we crush our goals, we get the promotions. But we are quite literally starving to death from a severe deficit in the meaning macronutrient. We are totally full, yet utterly psychologically malnourished. And historical data proves this shift is completely real. Back in the mid-1960s, a staggering 90% of college undergrads actively prioritized developing a meaningful philosophy of life. 90%. It was their absolute #1 goal for pursuing higher education. They weren't just going to school to secure a job. They were going to figure out exactly who they were and why they mattered. Now compare that to today. Fewer than half of undergraduates even bother looking for a life philosophy. The pursuit of meaning has been almost entirely eclipsed by the pursuit of career advancement and technical skills. We've essentially traded philosophy for productivity. And honestly, it's gotten so bad that modern surveys show 1 in 5 teenagers outright declare that life is entirely meaningless, which leads us to our final diagnosis. And it's a really profound paradox. Why are the smartest, most hardworking problem solvers on the planet, the strivers, failing so miserably to cure their own unhappiness? Think about it. If you are someone who is objectively good at life, someone who knows exactly how to navigate complex systems and crush goals, why in the world might you be hurting the most? Well, it comes down to this hard truth. Strivers struggle because they have been completely de-skilled when it comes to the deep mysteries of life. We are taught from a super young age that every single problem is just a complicated bug that can be fixed if we just apply enough hustle, data, and ingenuity. But meaning cannot be solved like a technical equation. It's a deep human mystery. It is not a productivity hack. You literally cannot outwork a lack of meaning. In all their technical excellence, strivers actually end up trivializing their own humanity by trying to reduce life's magnificent inscrutability into a neat, solvable puzzle. To cure this psychogenic epidemic, we have to acknowledge that we've built our own unheimlich simulation of false rewards. We've created this world of constant digital distraction just to hide from the void. And the only real prescription here is a lifelong journey toward deep, unsimulated human meaning. We've got to learn to engage the right side of our brains again, the side that actually understands love, beauty, faith, and calling, rather than just metrics, output, and productivity. So I'm going to leave you with this thought to take away.
Are you going to continue treating your life like a math problem to be solved with digital distractions and career gold stars? Or will you accept life's magnificent inscrutability, step out of the simulation, and begin the actual journey toward true meaning? The choice is entirely yours, but as the data clearly shows, your psychological survival literally depends on it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this gives you exactly what you need to start looking for the real thing.